And you have been a very naughty tank. So now I must do my search on you. No, who's that cool looking guy? Oh, wait, that's me. What's up, YouTube? This is Project Porsche. First project, gas tank. I mean, it's definitely rusty, but I don't know how bad it is. Alright, so if you're familiar with these cars, it turns out that they have a weak spot in the stamping in the top of the gas tank. I'm not sure if that's what's leaking on my car, or if it's a plastic expansion chamber that runs across the top of the tank. But the only way to find out is to pull this sucker out. So if I fill it up with half a tank of gas, it actually doesn't leak, which means it's got to be in the top, right? I really want to have a nice quality driver with this car, and fuel leaks aren't the best, right? Probably want to take care of those. So. Okay, so if you're wondering why this carpeting looks a little different than yours at home or what you've seen, it's because it is. When I got this car, the whole interior was basically baked by the sun to the point of crumbling into powder, which I've never seen before. When I first got this car, I worked on the carpeting. That was like the main thing, because the car actually runs good, or did run pretty good. Here you can see I'm taking out the carpeting that is actually 2 layers of carpeting, or more like 1 layer of the back of the pressed carpeting that is factory, and then I glued my own carpeting on top of it. So you can see that it's done in different pieces too. And that's because the carpeting didn't like to bend over such a shaped piece that was obviously pressed in a mold. So that was my solution to how I was going to redo the carpeting with really inexpensive carpeting that I got from Menards for I think $20 for the whole roll of carpeting that I did for the whole interior, and I still have enough left to do the rest. So now that large piece of foam rubber that I just removed actually had carpeting bonded to the top, and I took a grinder to it and removed it before I glued that rubber down. I've already had this stuff up once, but it seems like it's actually stuck back down with some of the factory glue, whatever they used. A mess from went up the first time, I guess. Trying to get the most amount of material and fabric to stay on this side. In this shot, you can see the carpeting tape that I used to reattach the factory carpeting down to this panel, to this rubber panel. I was hoping that I wouldn't have to take this whole thing out. It worked well. I was able to pull the carpeting back up, and yet it still is held very well in place. So I just have to bend it back that far. The screws on the top here have washers around them. The screws on the side are just screws because there's not enough space for a washer, I would assume. And then down here they're actually studs, one on either side with a nut. So I'm just using a number 2 screwdriver to remove the top and middle screws. And most importantly, getting the little washers that stuck themselves down. 8mm. Okay, now this is the fun part that I wasn't looking forward to. The steel at the bottom here, in the floor pan of the car, you can see it's pretty weak, so I tried not to bend that metal too much. And then you can see here, it's actually, once I finally broke it free, then I was able to peel it kind of away from the top. That adhesive is super sticky, so I covered both sides with masking tape. I am going to undo the exhaust, and that means I have to lubricate it and see if I can get it broken free eventually. So I'm gonna do that now. So you have to undo the shifting rod mechanism in order to drop the transmission. There's the rod. They didn't pull the boot back over the screw. So I'm gonna stick my hands up there and mess with that. A nice piece of copper wire. Copper wire actually worked pretty good. I ended up using it again when I put the tranny back in. And then there's the bolt that the wire went through. This guy is great. So I'm gonna sit here and watch this for a few minutes, and he's gonna tell me how to take this transmission out of the car. I highly recommend you checking out this guy's YouTube channel if you have a 944, because he's great, really good, very thorough, intelligent, definitely a good thing to check out. All right, so now it's a matter of just crawling underneath there and getting the exhaust undone. It's definitely a 13, it's just rusty. Oops. I need a longer extension. Ooh. Later I switched to a die grinder with a big cutting disc. Better light. The Dremel did work, it just took a long time, but I did eventually get the head off that bolt. So after that I decided to give myself some more room underneath the car. Some more light and some more room. The 6-ton jack stands do work nice for that. After I got the head off of the bottom bolt, I moved on to the other bolts. And I was actually able to break these bolts off. There was a break there, and then like a second break after that. Broke.
It's hard to be broadcasting that when you're talking about the network that has you on. What do you understand? The lights off.
Say what you will about our president, he sure is entertaining. He says some funny stuff. I decided to check out one of his rallies on YouTube while I worked on the car. You know, you can hear it, you don't have to see it. Pretty funny. Yeah, this one I didn't want to break my universal joint, so I ended up using a couple of wrenches, and I'm surprised that I was actually able to break the bolt with the wrench. Booyah. Yep, there it is, broke off.
If you don't want a far left Democrat running Mississippi, wait a minute, how's this guy? You know,
so I moved around to the back here and undid the nuts on the hanger bolts, and then after I knew I had it free, I hung it back up just temporarily to support the exhaust so that it didn't bend any of the exhaust further up the car or the header or anything. And then I moved on to back to where I was working before. Yeah, so I finally got out that grinder. I actually tried to punch out the bolt first to see if I could break it free. It just wasn't moving, so I moved on to the grinder and that took care of it. There it is, one Porsche exhaust system. Voila, a la peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I had to go back later though and drill that bolt out. So next was removing these
before my election, our leaders used.
What was that?
Before my election, our leaders used.
What did he? Anyway, so yeah, I took off the heat shields, which that's pretty straightforward. And then those are a couple of wires for the reverse light switch on the trans. Those just slide off. And then I moved on to this tube, which would not budge. I did spray some penetrating lubricant around it, but that sucker just would not move. I don't know. It's getting late, so I'm gonna clean up and start this again tomorrow. Look on the internet, make sure I'm doing that plastic tube removal thing right. And go on from there. Man, am I bummed. I had to go get Sophie because I got so disappointed. I've never dealt with a power surge that actually blew something out before, but I had both of my computer monitors out here doing video stuff, and I hit the on switch and I heard a big pop, and I managed to blow out 2 computer monitors at the same time. Super bummed. I thought these were gonna last for a long time. Really wasn't planning on buying a new monitor or 2. Yeah, that sucked a lot. But shit happens, right? Alright, so back to the car. The next thing to do is to actually remove the shifter rod from the shifting mechanism up there. Oh, my rubber is all ripped up and shit. That's something a girl wouldn't want to hear. So after you get the covering of the shifter handle off, whoop, there it is. Then you remove that C-clip that's there. Okay, now I gotta get down in here. There's a clip on this. Yep, just remove that little C-clip, and after that, it's just a matter of, don't drop it, pushing that rod past the shifter up underneath the stereo. Hold this up. Oh, but you're supposed to push it up. And that gives you enough room in the back to drop the trans. Oh, I could take this thing off, huh? Maybe. Yeah, that you don't need to take that thing off. No. Is that plastic? Okay, don't do that. Don't do that. There's foam underneath there. You kind of gotta work it through. I think I got it. And you can see it's up far enough. And the rod is, yeah, the rod is pulled back. So you can't see the rod anymore because it's pulled back. Now you're supposed to be able to remove this tube, pull it out towards the transmission. But 944 expert guy, he ended up breaking his, and so that's what's just gonna end up happening with this one, and then I'm gonna come up with some way to replace it. Alright, so the next thing is to undo this coupler that joins the drive shaft to the transmission. And you can see there's windows here. I used a H8 Allen socket, and it's just a matter of removing the bolts. Alright, there's one. I'm gonna rotate the motor over and get the other one. Now it's perfect. You do have to take the bolts all the way out. So after I took the bolt out, it's really easy to slide this thing to where it needs to go, so. And it's important to have them in the right spot when you put them back in too. Funny thing is the bolt that I just took out of there looks really bad. I was wondering why it didn't want to come out. Pretty sure this ain't a Porsche bolt. Alright, so now it's just a matter of these bolts on the bell housing and then the actual mounts, and I should be ready to drop this thing out. Yay! Not that I'm looking forward to putting it back in. I'm just gonna slacken up all these bolts. After loosening up the bolts a little bit, I brought in the first jack. Gonna put a piece of wood underneath the torque tube. So I put a piece of wood underneath the torque tube, and then after all the bolts were loosened up, then it was time to bring in the other jack and slowly try to let the transmission down without hitting anything. It is kind of a tight fit, so there's a little bit of finagling, but I just kind of took my time and eventually got the whole transmission to just drop down. I actually end up making a thing to actually hold the transmission on one jack for putting it back in, so you'll see that later when we get to that in the next episode. But yeah, it's just a matter of slowly kind of finagling that thing out. And there it is, one Porsche Transaxle. There you can see the coupler. Nice side shot. So next is going to the gas tank. Oh, besides this tube, as you can see, I tried spraying some lubricant on it, but still didn't do me any good. Now the next thing to do is the straps for the gas tank. But first I had to let the gas out of the tank, and luckily I didn't have a lot of gas in there. So it's just a matter of undoing the hoses and letting it drain. Does that make you have to go to the bathroom? Does seeing that make you have to pee? So I should have pulled out the aluminum tube to begin with. I thought I could get away without it, and in the end it just had to come out anyway, so those bands are kind of hard to get at, the one at least down there by the tank. They're all pretty much wedged in there, and they all have to go back in the same way too, because it's tight. I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep any of these hoses or not, so I was trying to be gentle with them. But in the end I ended up having to replace them, so actually that's where the tank was leaking from. It was leaking out of those hoses and from the fuel level sender, which, yeah, we'll get to see that later too. But yeah, so there's actually a rubber gasket between the hose and the top of the tank where the filler tube goes in here, and I wasn't expecting that, so that definitely put the kibosh on putting the tank back in without taking out that filler tube. Kind of an interesting thing. So here's the fuel level sender, and it's kind of like a coffee can top, kind of. The leads were kind of loose, so I was trying to make sure when I broke them free I wasn't twisting or bending the loose leads. Isn't it the perfect time for me to nod to where my old school clear plastic shock glass goggles are? Ha! I found them! Yay! So I'm just gonna try to pry this sucker out of here. I did my research beforehand, so I expected this to be kind of tough to get out. I wonder if I could pry on the top back there. It still was difficult than I was expecting. I hope or not. They just have that thing wedged up there. See, I got this dent back here I was worried about. Something got hit here, but it doesn't seem to be hitting it. Seems like it just needs to come out. So, it's not the most graceful, but I was trying to kind of kick on it with my shoe on a flat spot where I know I wouldn't bend the tank. Come to Papa, baby! It's coming. And I didn't want to pry on the seam. I feel it coming, babe. I feel it coming, babe. I gotta listen to that song now. Oh, it's really loud. Oop, gotta turn that down a little bit. There's a small, looks like it's a return or a vent line that runs across the leading edge of the tank, and it's just fastened by some of those metal clippy thingies. So I think I'm gonna take that hose off now, or try to anyway, before I finish pulling this thing out. It's this one hose, and I just tried to undo this, but that sucker is like rusted. So I just ended up cutting it. I had to replace that line anyway. Oh yeah, now we get somewhere. You know what, I think it's, if there's a foam gasket up here, or, I gotta go check on the top, see if there's anything holding it. Don't hit your head again on a shock, Ryan. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think it's just a matter of time now. Yeah, you could even like cut these hoses and stuff if you knew you were gonna be replacing them. Well, guess what? I was looking for my goggles and I couldn't find the dang things anywhere. Even still, it was a lot of messing around. A hose or something that's hitting it? Most of it is like getting it untucked from on top of that cross member. The foam gasket sort of running across the top was like stuck to it too. You could kind of hear it finally peeling away. So I tried to pick a soft piece of wood and kind of pry on the tank where I wouldn't do it any damage. I can actually hear it separating now. I went up top, made sure that nothing was catching, and it doesn't look like it. And eventually, it actually started to come out. Yeah, it's just a really tight fit. Ooh, I got it. Catch you with something. There it is. Whoop, there it is. Whoop, there it is. Shaka-laka, shaka-laka, shaka-laka. There you can see the vent line hoses on top. Yay! I knew I could feel it coming. Nice and clean up there. So there it is. There's a fuel level sender. I hope you guys enjoyed this first part of my gas tank refurbishment. This thing's kind of brown around here. Maybe it was leaking out of here. It was leaking out of there. Also was leaking out of the hoses. Gas would run down the side and yeah, I don't know. So there it is, one 924, 944 Porsche gas tank. Next time I'll be cleaning this thing out, sealing it up, putting new hoses on it, and putting it back in the car. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.
This is pretty much the worst video ever made.